Guru Nation, thank you so much for watching and listening. Make sure you like, subscribe, comment, share. Also, a huge 2025 shout out to my sponsors, Inato and Creo, once again for powering Guru Nation for another year of hard-hitting content, real clinical research information, opinions, unfiltered opinions, just my own opinions, and interesting riffs I have on certain things. So this podcast I wanted to do. So by the way, check out links to both Inato and Creo are underneath the show notes. I've gotten in the last year, which is very fitting for this video and podcast, several studies from Inato in my journey as a site owner. And Creo has been the only foundation, the only platform we've used for eSource, eReg, CTMS, and everything else. And I I promote these two companies because I believe in them because I use them. And they've been a huge part of my site owner journey, which I will kind of relate to the hero's journey. Not that I'm a hero, but in all movies and all books, there seems to be a script that everyone follows, which is the hero's journey. So you can Google it if you want, but basically, the hero's journey, for those who haven't heard it, and I'll Google it right now and read you the actual definition. It's the hero's quest from Call to Adventure is how it starts, and this is how I think I relate this to site ownership. And I was having a Zoom conversation with some tech vendors, and we were just thinking about, every tech vendor now, every AI vendor, every vendor, including these two, Anato and Creo, and everyone else in the space, they all want to get inside the mind of a site owner. Like, if we just knew what problems you had, we can figure out solutions. And it's not that simple, but that's a different podcast. But it got me thinking about the cycle of a site owner and how it relates to the hero's journey. Site owners don't have the same problems all the time. Like, I'm at a stage in my site, we're 4 years old now. That's not the same as my own site 2 years ago. And it's not going to be the same as this same site 2 years from now. And it's definitely different than someone else maybe in Iowa who's maybe in the same year as me. They're just going through their own journey. And I'm gonna actually write an article about this on LinkedIn on my newsletter because I think I don't know, it's part poetry, part musings of a site owner, and part I want to help you vendors out there kind of understand what's in our brains because our needs change as site owners. So, anyways, the hero's journey, basically every story, every movie kind of follows this. The Disney movies all follow this journey. It's the call to adventure. You have a hero. He or she has a call to adventure. They get some kind of supernatural aid to make it more interesting. They get a threshold. They have guardians. Then they hit a threshold where it's like the beginning of transformation. And then they go through challenges and temptations. They go through an abyss, so they hit a bottom. Then they have a transformation, atonement, and then a return. And it's their journey from the known to the unknown and back to the known. And I just, I know that site owners follow a similar thing. Like, and I came to this realization on this Zoom call. So, the life cycle of a clinical research site owner, this is basically the framework for this podcast slash video. And I just explained the hero's journey framework. There's a lot of parallels to that with entrepreneurship, and then site owners are entrepreneurial minded. So essentially, there's the big idea, and the problem with trying to figure out, well, what's the site owner's problems and what are their challenges? They're constantly changing because nothing is stagnant. This is a cycle and it's constantly repeating, and maybe it's constantly repeating itself in bigger circles, right? Or maybe in the specialization world, it's constantly repeating into infinitely smaller journeys, depending on which way you want to go. Or separate verticals. So maybe their circles are moving in the direction of time forward. So you're crossing through verticals. Get as deep with it as you want. But when you start out, there's a will. You have a will to do something. You have a will as an entrepreneur to take what's in the known and make sense out of the unknown and return it back to the known with a value add. At the end of the day, entrepreneurs create value. Successful entrepreneurs create value, but all of them try to have a value proposition, right? So at my site in Yuma, it was the first of its kind. Let's make clinical research available in Yuma, Arizona. It's a big enough city. It's in an underserved area of the country. There's a lot of diversity opportunities here. Sponsors are interested. There's a lot of medical conditions, chronic medical conditions in this part of the country. It's not exactly a small city. It has an infrastructure, it has clinicians, it has private practices, it has the more academic type medical systems, kind of has everything. So, but there's no research. And I knew going into it, hey, there's actually an opportunity there. There's a opportunity for me to create a value add. And so that's the call to adventure, right? Which is the next phase. The next phase is the call to adventure. Hey, I think I've identified an opportunity. I think I'm up for the challenge. It's something I willingly am getting involved in. And so initially, you are a founder. And throughout your cycle, and I'm going to oversimplify it, but throughout the cycle, and I've already gone through this cycle once and in 4 years, but this cycle is really like 2 to 3 years maybe, but I made mine four and I'm not done with it. So I'm going to go through the cycle again, but probably in a bigger circle this time or a wider circle because we're trying to expand our site and expand our value propositions and create more opportunities for all stakeholders involved. It's essentially from the hero's journey of a site owner is essentially from founder. So this person with a big idea, no one's done it. Then you got to start asking yourself, why has no one done this? I know I'm not smart necessarily, so like, or smarter than anyone else really. So why hasn't it been done? And you start poking holes in it, and then you're like, well, I don't know, it just hasn't been done. I can't see why not. So I'm willingly and voluntarily stepping into the unknown, stepping out of my comfort zone but having this mentality, this vision beforehand of what I want to do. And that's the founder mentality. So you have to have this big, Seth Godin calls it big, hairy, audacious goal. And mine was start the first site in Yuma, make it multi-therapeutic, involve as many specialties as we can. And I've completed one journey, and now I'm about to start another one, which is doing the same thing but bigger. So more specialties and slightly expanding outside of the initial Yuma. Now we're going to go into maybe San Luis, Arizona, places outside of Yuma. But you need this big, hairy, audacious goal. That's founder mentality. You can't have an employee mentality and do that. You cannot, this hero cannot be an employee mentality. You could be an employee and never have been a business owner before to be a site owner, but you got to change what's up here first. You got to change your mindset. So you got to have this founder mindset. Well, no one else did it. That doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. Matter of fact, could be a very good idea and no one's done it, which means it's a really good opportunity. So you get this big, grandiose almost idea. But then when you start doing the work, it requires the complete opposite mindset. Or maybe simultaneously holding the founder's mindset, you're not discarding it because you needed that to get started. But once you start journeying into the unknown, right? You've got to you've got to get once you cross that threshold between the known and the unknown, you're going to go through challenges and temptations and you're going to hit rock bottom at some point. And it takes at this point a servant mentality to do this. Now, in my case, I didn't hire anyone yet until I needed help. So I went on this journey myself with my business partner Jaime Valles, who's a nurse practitioner, but he was completely inexperienced with research. So I was kind of guiding him into the unknown. And I told them we don't need to really hire any employees until we get a study that we randomize someone on. And the first study we got, we didn't even randomize anyone on. We had 4 screen failures, but we made enough of a startup on the startup fees and the screen fail fees to get a notice by another sponsor from the same CRO that then gave us a study where we actually were able to randomize someone. And then we hired our first employee. And we went from founder to coordinator because the employee that we hired had no research experience either. So in order for me to train her, I had to take off my founder hat and put on my coordinator hat. So now here I am. I had this big, audacious, hairy goal. It's very grandiose. It's nice, your head in the clouds. But now I gotta get dirty in the mud because this person that I just hired to be a coordinator doesn't know what they're doing. It's my responsibility to train them. And while I'm doing that, I'm creating our SOPs and I'm building the infrastructure. What are we using? We're going to use Creo. What are we going to use for getting studies? Well, we're going to try to use Inato and DSCS, which is my consulting service where we help sites, brand new sites, small sites, medium-sized sites, big sites, negotiate budgets and get studies. So I put all that together, but when it boils down to how are you going to make money, I had to take off my founder hat, put on my coordinator hat. So my journey went from founder to, okay, now it's time to get down in the dirt. I got to get out of the clouds. Let's get down and dirty in the mud, be a coordinator, literally see visits, patient visits with my coordinator, do all the stuff like answer queries, enter data in the EDC, things that are beneath me, because remember, I'm a founder. I'm not supposed to be answering queries. Well, my philosophy of running a business is training my staff directly. I'm not just going to throw them there and say, watch these videos and figure it out. And the employees respect you more when they see that you've been in the trenches with them. Now, I know some of you founders that want to start sites, you maybe don't have time to get down and dirty. So you don't take off your founder hat really ever. And I'm not judging. If it works, it works. By far and large, the best way it works and the least risky way it works, and the way to bootstrap it best is to do it yourself and then build the system and then hire coordinators to take on those roles and remove them from you. So you do hit rock bottom at a point, and maybe I'm overly dramatizing it, but we when we hired 2 coordinators, we actually hired 3 coordinators because we kept getting studies. So this proved back to me as the founder that my thesis was correct. There is a demand here in Yuma. Let's hire 2 more coordinators because now we're getting more studies, and I'm already in the trenches with them, with one of them. Why not bring another one in the trenches and learn, and then bring a third one on too? And that's what I did. And I was down spinning centrifuge, spinning blood samples with them, drawing blood with them, buying dry ice, answering monitor queries, everything. Waiting in line to get PIs to sign stuff. And then we hit rock bottom. And we hit rock bottom where, at least for us, rock bottom was the first group of staff. Because I guess when you work for a startup, there's a lot of competition amongst the staff. They started getting upset with each other. I don't want to call it a power grab, but they knew what I was doing. I pretty much told them what I'm doing. I'm here in the trenches with you, but we're growing this business. You guys seem to know what you're doing. I'm taking off my coordinator hat. I feel like I've trained you enough, but I'm not putting my founder hat back on because I'm not there yet. I'm putting on a site director hat, which is different. A site director or a lead clinical research coordinator hat. And what I'm doing is I'm treating you all like equals. None of you 3 are more senior than anyone else. I'm going to see who's going to be the one to be the lead CRC. And that might have been a mistake for me because I maybe underestimated competitiveness that would create. At least that's the narrative I think of what happened, of what I saw transpire. And that might have been too much pressure for them because they started kind of fighting amongst themselves. Not all, but there was like a weird dynamic of like who's gonna want to be the site director or the lead CRC, and I never wanted to frame it that way. And that was totally my fault, but it basically came out that way. Like, hey, after CRC, there's something else. It's called lead CRC. And after that, there's something else. It's called site director. And that's when we hit rock bottom because the staff started fighting internally instead of helping each other. They started getting too competitive with each other and it started being a liability. So I had to come in, talk to some people. Two of them voluntarily left, and then we were back to, okay, now it's clear that you're the one that's gonna be the lead, and we're gonna hire some more coordinators. And now I'm gonna put myself as the lead CRC while training you to be the lead CRC. And so I took off my coordinator hat because now we had at this point three more. We hired three more staff, and I became the lead CRC. And I did that for about 6 months until I promoted the most senior one to be the lead CRC. And then I took off the lead CRC hat and I put the founder hat back on. Now, not that there's not more jobs I do besides those four, right? Or those three. It's founder, CRC, lead CRC, and then founder again. There's, of course, things in between that I still do. I'm still the one that pays the bills. I'm still the one that reconciles the bookkeeping. I'm still the one that I don't manage payroll. So we've kind of outsourced some of the business functions. Of course, I'm oversimplifying it, but basically it's this hero's journey of a cycle, and it may close one cycle, but now if you're trying to do replicate the same thing but in a bigger scope, meaning more therapeutic areas or other geographic areas, you're basically going through the hero's journey again. And it's the way I've done it in order to bootstrap and in order to build the systems that I know as far as our SOPs that I know we can be compliant with rather than this is why copying SOPs from other sites doesn't help. I mean, it gives you a framework, it tells you what someone else is doing, but it doesn't mean that's what you should do with your standard operating procedures. I think that strictly is the role of the founder and the coordinator and the lead CRC, but initially that's you, the founder, doing all those things. You are going from the known to the unknown. So I went from founder to the first coordinator at our organization, to then I hired coordinators and trained them while I was doing it, to then I graduated myself from a coordinator to the lead CRC or the site director. And then I graduated one of them to be the lead CRC. I graduated another to do patient recruitment. I graduated another to do chief TikTok officer, and I've graduated. So we've been able to do this cycle bigger, like grow the cycle bigger, meaning grow more therapeutic areas and grow geographically. And we also replicated the cycle smaller in the sense of smaller tasks. Like I was the first one to do a TikTok for our site, but then I basically gave that responsibility to someone else. So there's like smaller and smaller heroes' journeys. Same thing with patient recruitment. I used to do all the patient recruitment until I trained someone to do it, and now it's her primary responsibility, but it's also a responsibility kind of shared by everyone. But bottom line is it's not me anymore as the founder doing it. And I think that's really your role as a founder is to go first, be the first one to go into unknown territory. So whenever your organization's trying to do something new, you need to be the one to go out and do it. For example, when we find a new doctor, I have yet to delegate that to anyone else. It's me going out, doing the initial discussions. I'll bring my business partner with me because he's a nurse practitioner, but I have yet to not go be the one to meet that doctor. And that's another cycle. That's another hero's journey, like a mini one. Call it physician recruitment, where eventually I could delegate that to someone else, or if we are to expand in a new geographic territory, unless I go physically go in that city, I will actually need someone to do it. But that's still something that I, as the founder, would like to do first. until I train. And quite honestly, in our business, you're not constantly going out and recruiting physicians. So that's something that you can be a founder and still do. And it actually carries more weight to be the founder of the company and meet with these physicians because they know they're not talking to an employee of the organization. They are talking to the owner, which is super important, especially when you're making business dealings. But this is the basic life cycle and the hero's journey of a research site owner. And throughout all those, four different quadrants of this circle, there's different problems. And then when we complete one journey and we have more big, audacious, hairy goals, we're going to have different problems. And some of them rhyme, some of them repeat themselves, but some are brand new too. And the trials and tribulations, really, the majority of them are at the coordinator side. But there are plenty at the lead coordinator side, and there are still plenty at the site director side. So once you complete one hero's journey as a site owner, you return with the elixir in the hero's journey. The hero discovers something new, he transforms himself, and he returns with the gift of the goddess. And in this case, the gift of the goddess is we were successful, we became profitable, we have extra profits. I returned back to my founder role, proving that it works with the gift of profits that I can distribute to all my stakeholders. And then we ask ourselves, what do we do with these profits? Do we continue to invest them? Or do we just buy Bitcoin or whatever meme coins we want for ourselves? And then you decide again, well, we want to reinvest it. Let's grow. Let's do oncology now. Let's add inpatient capabilities. Let's do the same thing in San Luis, Arizona or Lake Havasu. We can decide, and those are other calls to adventure. And then we go through the same journey again while the other journey we just completed is still a flywheel generating profits. And by the way, when it stops working efficiently, that flywheel that we generated successfully, remember I came back with the gift from the goddess of profits. It's not guaranteed to work that way infinitely. You've got to make sure your staff are happy. You got to make sure your staff are still responsible. You got to make sure all the parts and components are working. And this is the area where all these vendors come in. Oh, well, let's make this easier for you. And that it's not so simple. Like if things are working, we don't want to touch it. It's when things don't work, we got to return to that journey, but we can bypass it and go straight to where the problem is because we've already created that initial flywheel. Sometimes we have to rebuild the whole thing. And so that's the life cycle of a site owner. Hopefully it's not too poetic for you, but I don't know. It's like this abstract idea I came up with on this Zoom call with these AI vendors, and I told them I would make a podcast and write an article on it because I think at the end of the day, what is poetry? Being able to observe something first and then articulating it back to others so they can learn. This is my attempt at poetry. Like, subscribe, comment, share, Guru Nation. Let me know what you think. Bye bye.